Hello, it's Ren Presents time, and welcome to Unmonetized Story Hour, hosted by me, Ren, providing you with quality content that I'm not making a dime for, and I'm proud of it. There are YouTubers out there who wouldn't piss on their grandmother to put them out if they were on fire unless they could monetize the entire ordeal, but not me. I'm not making any money, and that's the way it is, and that's the way it has to be. I'm good with it. Last week, we delved further into the machinations of the evil Lord Hershey of Milton and uncovered his Medallion B, a device that was under cloak that he snuck onto the Duke's ship, allowing him to come and go at his convenience and at his leisure. With that Medallion B there, that's how Lord Milton was accessing the ship, and thanks to the sisters, and then thanks to Peter of Ruthven, the device was uncovered and disarmed because it was rigged with a bomb and is now out of service. Therefore, Lord Hershey of Milton is no longer a threat to show up on the ship. And we see that Lady Poe and Lord Peter are beginning a bit of a flirtation back and forth. In fact, Lady Poe gave him a kiss on the cheek, and if you think that's not a big deal, we're dealing with Lady Poe here, a stodgy, upright, up and down lady of standing who comes from a house major, a great blue Vith house, while Lord Peter of Ruthven comes from a house minor that's bound to a duke. Technically, socially, they're not anywhere near each other, and they're not even supposed to be fraternizing, and Lady Poe takes these things seriously, but it doesn't really matter. She's starting to feel things and experience things that she's never had the opportunity to indulge herself in before, and she's realizing that all the social norms of society that she has lived by for over 200 years really don't mean anything. She's found someone that makes her feel special, and society be damned, so giving him a kiss on the cheek is a big deal. And then he thanked her for her fast hands, for her miraculous fins silver tech creation, and saving the life of his brother Sage, of Tori Jane, and of the Duke. And she said, well, if you must, a kiss on the cheek would be a fine compensation. So he goes to give her a kiss on the cheek, and she turns her face at the end and they kiss. This is shocking stuff, people. This is shocking stuff, but it happened. And now we continue Part 3, Chapter 23, An Unflyable Ship. This is a bit of a longer chapter, so let's not pussyfoot around. Let's get to it. Part 3, Chapter 23, An Unflyable Ship. Let's proceed. The Seeker stumbled through the thin air of the upper atmosphere, struggling to stay on course. Sorry, the helmsman, mouth pulled back in terror, her blue hair quickly falling out of its clips and berets, had a death grip on the wheel. The ship was pulling hard to port, and the nose was bound and determined to sink into a terminal dive at every possible moment. Moving it required more strength than she had, and 2 crewmen had been assigned to assist her, all 3 straining against the unbalanced pressures, trying to keep the ship righted. She could see through her helm viewer that there was shadow tech everywhere outside. There were tiny shadow tech ships flying in locust-like swarms. The captain had always told her that the helm was the heart of the ship, and that through it one could feel the forces of space moving all around. She could feel the multitude of dull thuds as the black ships blindly bounced off of the cloaked sides of the ship through the wheel, but the sensations told her nothing, gave her no insight. She also felt the slight magnetic pull of the colossally huge spherical Shadowtech creatures flying through the air. Again, the information gave her no additional thoughts. All she knew was that the ship in its current state was virtually unflyable, and were it not for the cloak provided by Lady Poe of Blanchfort, they should have been devoured some time ago. Sari thanked her mother's name that Xandarr was a fairly placid world. Any storms or great amount of turbulence, and the ship easily might have rolled over and nosedive into the ground by now. Verlin stood nearby, holding on to the helm railing. Helm, ETA to Xandarr Keep. 5 minutes, if we survive. Keep to a can-do spirit, Helm. Good. When we arrive, I want you to locate a suitable spot and stand on station. There, we will try to contact the captain, either by comm or by sister, pick him up as quickly as we can, and then get our league tails out of here. Verlin turned to Sassy at the force-sensing position. Crewman, what are you seeing down there? Shadowtech, Lieutenant, and plenty of it. The ring around the planet is dissipating as the small black vessels making up its composition are blanketing the surface of the planet, flying around randomly, intercepting anything that tries to take off. I saw them swarm a launching transport not long ago. The big ones, those huge Shadowtech creatures, appear to be razing small towns and villages to the ground, and ma'am, they appear to be eating the inhabitants. Eating them? Yes, ma'am, by the dozens. Ma'am, what should we do? The wires are choked with people crying out for help, the comm added. Any orders, ma'am? Verlin stood there a moment. Everyone looked at her. I don't know. I really don't. With luck, we'll soon have the captain back. We'll fully brief him on our findings and proceed from there. We all need him back. The ship pulled hard to the left. Sari and the 2 crewmen fought to level their flight. Verlin turned to give them a hand. If anybody on the ship wanted the captain back, it was her. Well, that's got it, I think, Peter said. Poe, leaning against him, rested her chin on his shoulder and peered into the box. It was completely out of character for her to behave so. She was normally so reserved and shy, but Peter didn't seem to mind. They were all alone, and it just felt right. This block, this one here, this is what controls the system. It then feeds power to these crude pieces of beryllium, which vibrate at a super fast frequency, opening a point-to-point portal. Remarkable, Poe said, staring at Peter, putting her arm around him, desperate to kiss him again. Now, all I need to do is pull this component here, and the whole thing will be rendered useless. Peter pulled out a small bit of circuitry. The lights and sounds it was making stopped. It went dead. So much for Lord Milton. They stood and made their way out of the ship when Poe suddenly stopped and shuddered. Lady Poe? Anything wrong? She stood there. I can feel it. All around us, Peter. Shadowtech, and... Her Blanchfort blue eyes grew wide. Lady Poe? She seized him by the hand and dragged him to the front of the ship. Peter, come quickly. They reached the cockpit and looked out the glass. Outside, Shadowtech, in waves and layers, was everywhere. Several thousand feet below, a huge Shadowtech beast at least 3 miles high was at work flattening a town. This is it, Peter. This is what Carahill was talking about. This is what he saw. This is what he was trying to stop, don't you see? Dear creation, he was trying to save these poor people. Look at it. This whole planet will be laid waste. What can be done? We must find Carahill. He'll do something. He'll stop it. Through the glass, Shadowtech was everywhere. We don't even know where Mr. Carahill is. He vanished. Lord Milton must have him. He must be restraining him. Peter, is it possible for us to use this device, this Medallion B, and go to his location? Yes, but then we must reactivate it at once and find Carahill. Poe pulled Peter back to the silent device. Using his sight, Davidge helped guide the refugees through the tunnels. The Shadowtech beast above was tearing up the landscape, and occasionally it lucked into a tunnel, collapsing that run. After a bit, they made it into a fairly safe chamber where the wounded were laid out. Looking back with his sight, Davidge found Kai and Inez moving about in the tunnels following Tweeter. Sig, using telepathy, reached Kai, and they were able to assist them into the chamber. Inez, though tired, began looking at the survivors. Before long, the king of Xandarr appeared. He appeared both sad and angry. I thought you understood not to waste our sacrifice. Did you get word to your ship? We did, Kai said, her face a mess after her battle with the princess. Davidge stood. You, king, set women and children out for slaughter. I could not allow that. This is a dark day, Captain. If you get to your ship and you do as I have begged, then perhaps other women and children may yet be saved. His face darkened. My beloved wife was out there, leading the people. Davidge looked around. Is she here? Is she safe? A tear rolled down Balor's face. She died. Up there, Captain. Buying you time. Buying all of Xandarr time. I'm sorry, King Balor. There was high above a commotion of explosions. Outside, the Shadowtech beasts and black hats scattered about and were probing the dark skies overhead. They probed the skies with ebon searchlights, a sort of opposite from Davidge's sight. They were looking for something they were desperate to find. Davidge had a thought. No, he said. It can't be. He looked around, sighting hard. Then, to the north of the ruins of the keep, he saw the Seeker descending from the heights in a deep, fabulously intricate cloak. A good creation they brought the ship down for us. It must be badly damaged. It's barely able to fly in a straight line. Have they dropped the cloak? Are they able to see it, love? Sig asked. No, Madame Tory Jane must have put up a painted cloak because it's a damn good one. I'm having difficulty seeing it myself, but the black hats are looking hard. I guess she's good for something, Sig said. He turned to Kylos. Kai, can you get in contact with the sisters? Kai closed her eyes and concentrated. Yes, Dav, I can. They're close enough now. Good. Kai, confirm our identity with the sisters and tell them to have the ship pass beneath the pinnacle of Xandarr Keep. We will then drop down onto the ship and enter through a hatch. Link up 2 hours. We'll need to get a move on. Aye, Dav, I'm telling them. Davidge went to Inez. Inez, what's the status of these wounded? He shook his head. Bad, Dav, these 5 here are critical. Then they are coming with us. We'll treat them aboard the Seeker, then return them home once it's safe to do so. King Balor, we will need people to help us carry them to Xandarr Keep Pinnacle. The king's face brightened a bit. You will have them. Davidge looked around a bit more, trying to become familiar with the landscape. He saw something. Oh, dear creation. What is it, Dav? Sig asked. I see a huddled group of black hats in the levels above near the north wall. So there are lots of black hats up there. Sig, I recognize some of them from our battle in the Great Hall. These are the black hats that the Carahill figurines carried away. Davidge was dumbfounded. I assumed they were carried off and killed, but there they are. It never occurred to me that... Dav, I'm not following you. Sig, Carahill's figurines didn't kill the black hats. They freed them. The black habit's darkness has been shattered. I don't know how he managed it, but they're free. Oh, that little trickster, Sig said. Why didn't he just kill them? This isn't a game. The black hats up there are playing for keeps. Well, I suppose he thought they were worth trying to save, Sig. I mean, with the point, there's no stopping it once it started unless the black hat is killed, yes? So in that case, he had no choice but to kill with blue fire. But for the rest, he saved them. Perhaps there's a lesson in that. How many do you see out there, Dav? Kai asked. I see 44, to be precise. They are huddled and confused. They appeared lost. Some appear to be wounded. One with a head of blue hair is trying to lead them to some extent to keep them together and guide them to safety. There aren't very many safe places up there. I see Hulgisman on the prowl and a vast flock of Shadowtech birds en route from the west. That flock will pick their bones clean. It'll be on them in minutes. They've nowhere to go. Their death is on the wing. Any STTs? Sig asked. No, there's a Kabbalist symbol nearby keeping them away. I can see its light. The leader seems to have realized that something special is in that area and is trying to take advantage of that small protection, but they're penned in and wide open to attack from above. 44 black hats, Kai said. Why don't they just blow that Shadowtech flock and Holgisman away? No, Sig answered. You have to sort of relearn how to do everything once you're freed. That's what I remember. They aren't going to be able to do much in the way of defending themselves for maybe if they had another hour or two to get themselves together perhaps, but Davidge drew his card and began down a tunnel. They don't have an hour. Captain, where are you going? Balor demanded. Outside. I'm going to get them in here. But they're black hats, Captain. They have come to kill us. They came here to create mayhem, true enough, and have found themselves redeemed instead. You yourself said redemption is always possible, and that has just been proved. Look there. You had to crawl through the mud to cleanse your soul. They had to pass through a firestorm and had the good fortune to encounter a being that cared enough to take the extra step not to kill, but to set them free. Now they are lost children requiring shelter. I'm going to go up and get them. You cannot! Balor put his hands on Davidge's shoulders. Those Shadowtech birds will pick your bones as keen as theirs. Get out of my way, King. The people watched as the two squared off. Sig and Kai joined Davidge at his side. You cannot go up there, Balor repeated. You are needed beyond these walls. If there are people needing saving above, and you say they can be trusted, then I'll go. The north wall, you said, yes? I will lead them down here. If you fall, we are lost. We need you, alive, to bring the fleet. If I fall, well then maybe perhaps you'll remember I died trying to save those in need, and that I died speaking you the truth. A man stood. I'll come with you, King. I'm not afraid. Nor am I. I will come, another said. And I. Balor and his group set off, and with Davidge watching, soon all 44 black hats were in the tunnels, having been fetched only moments before a Shadowtech flock discovered them. They huddled in mass, eyes wide, parched mouths lolled open. Inez treated their wounds. Some were quite severe. One had been shot by Kai's SK and lived. The 50 caliber shell passed through her right side, somehow missing everything breakable or vital. Kai was open-mouthed over the improbability of that one. Carahill must have been looking out for you, lady, Kai said as Inez treated the huge wound. She gazed at him blankly in return. The king and his folk, though initially hesitant, brought them food and drink as the birds screeched overhead, fretting over the warm flesh denied to them. It was the best news Verlin had gotten in a while. The sisters, calm and collected as usual, explained that they had received a telepathic message from Lieutenant Kylos with the captain's code, instructing them to pass beneath the pinnacle of Xandarr Keep, and that the captain will drop down at the top of the ship and manually enter. The message also contained news of the missing Marines, that they and the sister they defended had fallen. Terrible news indeed, but time for mourning later. First, it was time to collect the captain, the Countess, Samaritan Inez, and Lieutenant Kylos. Kylos. Verlin couldn't wait to get that Johnny in the gym. Helmsman Sari, her blue hair a fallen disaster, protested. Ma'am, we cannot maneuver the ship that close to a large, fixed structure on the ground. We'll crash! I don't want to hear it, crewman. That is a direct order from the captain, and he is depending on us to be where we're supposed to be. Turn that wheel and get it done. On the cone, the sprawling complex of Xandarr Keep, now a largely fallen ruin, loomed ahead. 4 Shadowtech beasts, miles high, roamed the perimeter, digging up the ground, and a drifting cloud of black ships milled about everywhere. Black searchlights panned about, looking for them. The pinnacle of the keep rose up high off the ground, at least 1,000 feet. Large, smooth, onion-shaped, it was a typical Xandarr-style dome. At least it was fairly open area, with lots of places to put the ship. Ebon streams of dark light moved all around. The black hats were searching for them in earnest. They could not stay here long. Getting up to the top of the pinnacle was tough going, especially with the wounded, and it was a long, long climb. Everyone was winded. Towards the top, Davidge found a small hatch leading outside. Due to the extreme slope of the exterior of the dome, there wasn't really any place to stand, and it was a long way down. Looking around, Davidge could see the Seeker coming in under cloak, flying terribly, almost laughably bad. He couldn't see any real damage, so he was at a loss. Perhaps crewman Sari had been hurt or killed, and a stand-in was in at the helm. That must be it. He sighted into the bridge, and there was Sari and several lads holding on to the wheel. Sari's blue hair, passed down from her mother's house pitcock line, was all over the place, and she appeared to be in an ongoing argument with Lieutenant Verlin. He noted Verlin's SK was nearly empty. Obviously, something odd had happened on the ship since he left. In any case, it was painful watching the ship stumble in. Finally, the frontal section of the ship slid in about 100 feet below. Kai, tell the sisters to have them raise the ship up about 60 feet. Then we'll just slide down. 1 second, Dav, Kai said. Okay. Dutifully, Davidge watched the ship rise until it was only about 10 feet down. He and Sig climbed out onto the precarious exterior of the dome, having no fear of the heights. Their ability to waft made long falls meaningless. Kai poked her head out of the hatch and, of course, saw and heard nothing below. You sure it's down there, Dav? She asked tentatively as Tweeter chirped. Come on, Kai, he laughed. He pulled her out and lowered her down. But Kai was shaky. All she could see was that she was standing on nothing. Such was the total and powerful nature of the cloak. Dav! She called up, trying to steady herself. Where do I go? Where's the nearest hatch? To your 3 o'clock. 10 paces. Tweeter swirled off her shoulder and went to the hatch. Kai turned and followed him. She knelt down. Am I there? You're there. Tweeter jumped back onto her shoulder and she felt around with her hands. No, it's no good. I can't work the access panel if I can't see or feel it. Just hold there, Kai. I'll be down in a moment. They began carefully lowering down the wounded. Then they lowered Inez down. Your turn, Sig, Davidge said. She smiled. I'm going to sleep for a week after this is over, love, and you're going to be there with me the whole time. I'm looking forward to it. He kissed her and lowered her down. Then he leaned into the hatch and told the refugees to go back down and hide. Sirens went off. 100 black searchlights trained their beams on the huddled people standing on the hull. Having a fixed target to concentrate on, the black hats brought down the cloak, and there was the Seeker in all its glory, roaring like a banshee. Shadowtech ships, monsters, and blasts from below began converging on their location, and the ship rocked with concentrated Shadowtech hits. Davidge jumped down, and Kai, now able to see the hatch, had already gotten it open, was lowering the wounded in. A black ship came rolling in from 9 p.m. Sig reached up and shot it down with Silvertech. A blast of Shadowtech rolled into the starboard wing, yawing the ship. Battle shot batteries from all quarters of the ship opened up and answered, thrumming with impossibly loud reports, not destroying but scattering the black ships and raking the Sten black hats on the ground. The Seeker was trapped. It was a sitting duck. There was no place for it to go. A towering Shadowtech beast came in and seized the neck of the ship with several tentacles. Sig loosed 5 blobs of Silvertech, which quickly formed into her trusty Seeker familiars. In a buzzing cloud of silver missiles and tiny shot, they flew up and engaged the beast, swirling around, the creature pawing at them. It released the Seeker and made to destroy these little buzzing hornets, waving its tentacles in a frustrated frenzy. More Shadowtech blasts came in, slamming into the frontal hull, pinning the ship in. The Black Hats had the Seeker right where they wanted her, and they were not going to let her go. As Davidge made to close the hatch, he saw an amazing thing. From the ruins of the keep, a flare was fired, rising into the turbid sky in a lazy arc. Charging up from the hidden shelters, about 100 motley Xandarr ships leapt into the air to engage the black ships. The sky around Xandarr Keep became a confused furball of spiraling, tumbling, firing vessels. One of the Xandarr ships strafed a nearby courtyard. Cloaked black hats, unprepared and unstenned, died in the firing, and the blasts of incoming Shadowtech greatly lessened. They made a hole. The Sigger wobbled out into clearer air. Shadowtech ships closed in from all quarters, only to be engaged by Xandarr ships and Sig's silver familiars. Davidge shut the hatch and headed for the bridge as the ship began fitfully climbing for altitude. "Captain on the bridge!" Verlin shouted with delight, seeing the lift doors open. Davidge stormed onto the bridge and headed for the helm, with Kai and Sig following. Verlin and Kai eyed each other darkly. "Aft quarter," he roared. "Aft quarter eye." The moment his hands touched the helm, he recoiled. What in the name of creation has happened to the helm? Sir, Sari said, "the helm was sabotaged and quickly reattached without calibration. The ship is barely flyable." "Sabotaged? You flew the ship down from the heights of low orbit with the helm like this?" "Yes, sir, I did, sir," Sari said with a touch of pride. Davidge gripped the wheel. "I saw you had several lads helping you out with the wheel in such a state of overbalance. Well, no matter. Helm, I want you to pay careful attention to what I'm about to do, and I want you to remember it. It will serve you well in the years to come." Sari watched closely in rapt attention. Verlin also stopped what she was doing to watch. "Through the helm, the ship speaks to you, Lady Sari, and you must listen to what it's saying. Now, I want a 15-degree nose down with a port counter flood of 19 minutes. Engineering, I want a 10-degree boost to the near starboard thruster bank and 2/4 yaw after pitch." After a moment, Davidge appeared satisfied. "There. Much better." With that, Davidge cranked the wheel and banked the ship hard. He sighted through the hull outside. Shadowtech was flying everywhere. Swarms of Shadowtech ships spewed black spheres, which the sisters stationed in the ship's tower dispelled and kept at bay. Boom! Boom! Several black hats were peppering the Seeker with Shadowtech blasts. He was about to bank away and engulf them with battle shot when they were lifted into the air and pulled apart. The sisters from the tower again. More black hats to the south in the ruins of the keep. Down came Sig's familiars, screaming in for the kill. Tiny missiles, silver battle shot. "I just got 3 of them, Dav," Sig cried. "Ha ha! That's right, your Sten doesn't work against my Silvertech, does it? So sorry. Oh, creation, one of them is down. Took a blast in the rear. I've got 4 left out there." Davidge hauled the Seeker around in a hard, sucked-in turn. He saw several huge Shadowtech monsters were converging on the remains of Xandarr Keep. He spun the wheel, avoiding a massive tentacle swing. "Canister control, fire in 2, port quarter." Several canisters popped out and exploded at various places on the sphere's head. The Shadowtech stretched and deformed, but regained its previous shape. "There's too much. We can't damage it." Sighting, Davidge watched Sig's little armadas of familiars engage the beast and pepper it with canister and shot. He watched the beast taking damage. Little holes of melting Shadowtech formed on its head. It took flight and fled the area, the tiny Seekers following in a harassing cloud to finish it off. Sig stood up. "Silvertech, Dav. Silvertech plows right through it. My familiars are making quick work of these Shadowtech beasts. Ha! Right off another one. He's down. Oh, feature, I just lost a familiar. Damn Shadowtech birds got it." Davidge thought a moment. "Sig, do you have enough Silvertech to coat some of our canisters?" To what?" "To coat them in Silvertech. Given your familiar's performance, I'll wager a canister coated in a little Silvertech will be instantly deadly to these creatures." Yes, I suppose so," Sig said. Kai jumped up. "Come on, let's go. We'll start in the forward canister bay. I'll show you where it is." Sig headed to the lift door. She turned as she entered. "I love you," she said, heading towards the lift. Sari stared at the holocone in horror. "Captain!" she cried as a blizzard of black spheres loomed ahead. Too many for the sisters to disperse. In a flash, Poe, Johnny, and Peter appeared in a dark metal corridor. Dizzy, feeling momentarily sick, they clutched their heads and allowed waves of nausea to pass over them. Nearby, a gangly machine similar to the one mounted on the Duke's ship thrummed against a metal wall. Medallion A, no doubt. Recovering a bit, they drew their weapons, their large, buzzing Herdomers. Johnny also took his sap scarf off and hardened it. It coiled about like a snake for a moment, and then took the shape of a large, black, arcane sword. "Now, Lady Poe, please stay close to me," Peter said, holding his energy gun. Johnny crept down the corridor. "Give it a rest, Peter." Ahead, there was a vigorous commotion. There were sounds of heavy machinery running, and the roars and cries of a large animal drifting up from below. Cautiously, they made their way to the end of the corridor. They reached a catwalk overlooking a huge, machine-laden laboratory. Down, far below on the floor of the laboratory, were several Science Ministry officials, most of them holding ropes. One of them was lugging around a huge laser drill. They were trying to subdue a silver seal with ropes. Several discarded ropes lay strewn about, apparently having been bit through. The seal was roaring with displeasure. "Carahil!" Poe cried. The scientists looked up. Carahil looked up. A wry voice came from the open floor of the lab.
"Well now, vinegar pissers, what have we here?"
Lord Milton, gangly on his overly long legs and huge wig, appeared on the other side of the catwalk opposite them. "Lord Milton," Poe said. "I am assuming you are Lord Milton. We are here to free Carahil, for he is needed on the planet Xandarr. I have hopes you will not impede us."
"This!"
he screamed in an odd voice. Milton appeared to be frightened of Lady Poe for a moment. Then he rocked with laughter.
"You vehement vixen! I was shortly on my way to kill the lot of you on the Seeker, but as you are now here, you save me, at least for now."
"A nauseating trip! You nearly killed my brother, and Tori Jane, you badly wounded the Duke," Peter said.
"You mean they're not dead? Oh dear! And how was that toe-tapping temptress and your book-reading butt-wiper of a brother doing?"
"Perhaps I should have shot him in the face and improved his looks." "He's better than you're going to be in a moment," Johnny said, leveling his Herdimer and firing. Whee! Lord Milton, all arms and legs, ducked with unusual agility and returned fire with his Xandarr. Blam! Peter formed his shield with his sap, and the bullet thudded off of it. Whee! Johnny fired again. Again, Lord Milton ducked incredibly fast. He brandished his gun. Blam! Blam! Peter fell to his knees with the force of the shots against his sap shield. "Johnny, will you take him down? My sap's coming apart." Blam came another shot. His sap collapsed and fell into dusty strips. Blam! Lady Poe stepped forward and caught the bullet out of the air with her lightning-fast Silvertech. "Lord Milton, stop this foolishness right this moment," she said. Milton gave a devilish smile.
"You blonde-headed, bullet-snatching belladonna, that's an interesting trick, I must say."
Poe raised her arm and sent a thick stream of Silvertech across the open space of the heights and roped Lord Milton from head to foot. "Now, sir," she said, "we shall take Carahil and be on our way." Lord Milton, wrapped up like a piece of silver taffy, laughed.
"I cannot allow you to leave, neither you two Rathbun rumpots, or you, woman, you vile bag of vomit. And for that matter, I cannot allow anyone in the Seeker to survive as well."
"I've an image to maintain." "Lord Milton, I do not wish for any to be harmed here. Please allow us to free Carahil and depart in peace," Poe repeated. "Mother!" Carahil cried from below. "Break this circle!" His eyes widened. "Look out!" Suddenly, blam! Blam! Huge Xandarr shots rained down on them. Lady Poe of Blanchford, not prepared for the shots, fell, blood seeping from a large chest wound on her left side. "Poe!" Peter shouted as he dove to her side, shielding her from further blasts. "Mother!" Carahil cried as he loped against the edge of the circle. Though he was still wrapped up, somehow Lord Milton had got his Xandarr out of the wrappings and was brandishing it.
"Oh, you gown-wearing gut grinder, wake up, will you?"
he shouted.
"I suppose you'll simply forget the matter of my attempted murder of pretty much everybody on the Seeker. Let bygones be bygones, will we? No. No. Along with these Rathbun teetotalers, you are going to die."
He looked down at the scientists standing there with the ropes.
"Well, you pack of Larry Lab coats and Billy Button pushers, don't just stand there. Get 'em!"
The scientists dropped the ropes and advanced on the stairs. Johnny and Peter leveled their weapons and quickly shot the two down. The remaining four looked at each other and then began running in the opposite direction.
"Oh, you paid traitors, you take that!"
Milton cried. Blam, 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 blam. to gun them down himself. Johnny aimed and hit Lord Milton square in the chest with his Herdimer.
Ha! He cried. If that blonde-headed bimbo survives a few minutes more, I'll be sure to thank her for this nice shield she made around me. Very handy and quite fashionable, huh?
Milton got another arm out of the Silvertech wrappings. He held several red haws in his bony fingers, which he began throwing down in earnest. Quickly, Johnny shot two out of the air and side-glanced a third, which clattered to the far side of the lab and opened up with a wiry whine. It gruesomely cubed the flesh of one of the fallen scientists. A fourth came down and Peter shot it out of the air. Milton was enraged.
You finger-wagging, toilet-water-drinking...
Milton didn't get a chance to finish his tirade. Peter quickly trained Lord Milton in his sights and fired, hitting him square in the head, where his face exploded in a tattered spray of cooked flesh and shattered bone and a bloody, half-destroyed wig. He slumped down in a long-armed, leggy, silver-coated heap. "Good shooting," Carahill said. "Good shooting. Now break the circle and I'll be able to tend to my mother." Peter approached the circle and looked down at it. It was just a bit of chalk, rice, and sand. Peter brushed some of it aside with his hand. The chalk didn't budge. It was set like concrete. Frustrated, Peter picked Lady Poe up and, crossing the circle, placed her inside. He whispered into her ear, "You can't die," and kissed her on the cheek. Carahill began immediately tending to her wound. He turned to the circle. He hit the hard-set substance. He hit it with his fist. He kicked at it. He took his gun and started hammering at it with the butt of his Herdimer. "Johnny, help me with this, will you?" Peter yelled, still hammering at it. As Johnny made his way to the circle, Lord Milton's gangly, tangled body suddenly came down to the floor of the lab with a crash. It shuddered with the impact and then was still, his large Xandarr pistol dropping out of the limp fingers to the metal floor. A bit put off, they continued banging away at the circle, making no progress. "Mr. Carahill, how is Lady Poe?" Peter asked, concerned. "Fine, she's fine. I have healed her. She simply needs rest. Did you guys get my present?" "What present?" Johnny asked, pounding away at the circle. Oh, you mean the bubbles," Peter said. "Yes, we got that. They were a big help." "Glad to hear it," he said. The hard set of the circle was stubborn, resisting their hammering. I suggest heat," Carahill said. Johnny adjusted his Herdimer. "Get away, Peter, will you?" he said irritably. "I don't see why you don't just step across, Mr. Carahill." Carahill shrugged. "I can't. Those are the rules." Johnny fired a long burst at the chalk line. The metal floor beneath began glowing and then melted and sagged. The chalk line stood rigid, resisting the heat. "Good creation," Johnny roared. "I suggest something heavier, like that laser drill over yonder. How about a good whack from your sap?" Carahill said. "Well, quiet you," Johnny barked. "Will you be quiet?" Peter entered the circle and went to Poe. He checked her wound and saw it was perfectly healed. Poe, soundly sleeping. He caressed her face and stroked her hair. He kissed her on the cheek. Feeling relieved, he looked back with some humor as Johnny and Carahill bickered. He noticed something. The heap of Lord Milton's body moved. Headless, it shuddered. Johnny." "What?" he yelled, looking in his direction. A sickening escape of gas came out of the burned-up stump of Lord Milton's neck. His legs began kicking, his buckled shoes jingled, and his hands clenched and unclenched. "What in the name of creation is this gas bag doing?" Johnny cried. One of Lord Milton's shoes flew off in the commotion. "Johnny?" Peter said, staring in horror. "Does it look to you like this headless body is growing? Getting bigger?" "Oh, don't be stupid," he roared. Johnny aimed and fired a long burst into the headless, kicking body, catching the ruins of his clothing on fire. Soon, despite Johnny's protests, there could be no doubt. Milton's headless, burning body was growing, the sounds of charred cloth beginning to stretch and tear. And then, as if to cement the unreal scene, the body, hissing, flaming, and throwing, sat up with purpose and intent. Not quite knowing what to make of this, Johnny lunged at the body and made to put the deadly shaft of his sap into its chest. A thin, dainty, albeit giant-sized arm shot out from the blackened tatters of his clothes and caught Johnny about the midsection. The arm was long and delicate, alabaster, distinctly feminine in appearance. Johnny looked down at the huge hand encircling his waist. It looked like a gigantic lady's hand. Effortlessly, the hand tightened its grip and Johnny exhaled in a woof. Johnny was then thrown head over heels, landing roughly some distance away on the other side of the lab near one of the dead scientists, his sap clattering after him. As Peter and Cara Hill watched, the headless body stood. Through the empty collar of Lord Milton's burning coat, a head emerged. A female head with long, sticky hair. Peter mused the head was rather pretty, though its eyes were wide and diabolical, so filled with rage and hate. Well now, she said with a brand new mouth, it appears we're going to have ourselves an undignified scene here, boys. So with that in mind, I might as well get comfortable. Lord Milton grew again, at a faster rate this time. His, or rather her, chest burst open, revealing a huge bosom in all its glory. Similarly, his rear end expanded into a rather feminine-looking caboose. A defeated corset spiraled away with a snap. Then, 3 pairs of long, thin, feminine arms emerged from the ruined waistcoat. What was left of Milton's clothing submitted to the burning and stretching and disintegrated into a smoking pile at the creature's delicate feet. The monster was apparently quite fireproof, as the burning clothing didn't trouble it in the least, didn't even blacken its skin. There, standing before them, was a complete 8-armed, 8-breasted hermaphrodite, perfectly formed and goddess-like in her lines and curves, framed dramatically in billowing smoke. Cara Hill's book appeared, and he scribbled in a few things. Okay, that's what that was, he said. Sorry, Peter, I should have said something. My bad. And with that, we conclude Part 3, Chapter 23, An Unflyable Ship. Very action-packed scene. The Seeker makes its way from orbit. It's getting attacked by the Black Hats from all sides. It's under cloak, and they can't see it, but they have these ebon light searchlights. If they get enough of them on it, they can drop the cloak. They reach Captain Davage, and he manages to reboard the ship. He feels the badly messed up helm wheel, recalibrates it by doing this and that, and then takes control. And now a huge battle is taking place outside of Xandarr Keep with several of the locals, Xandarian locals, flying up in their own private ships, their hot rods, whatever, trying to help out in this battle with all these Shadow Tech vessels. And then Poe and Peter and little Johnny use Medallion B and go to Lord Milton's laboratory, where they find Cara Hill on the verge of getting vivisected. They take down the scientists and also get into a gun battle with Lord Milton. And Lord Milton's secret is revealed at last. So there's a lot of, when you're dealing with a completely unreal world, there's a lot of world building, a lot of lore. It's in the background, and it doesn't necessarily make its way to the page, but it's there, and it's supposed to add to the unreal tapestry that's going on, just to give it some character and some color on the page. And if you read the House of Bloodstein, the Mentralysis books, you recall the character of Leica, who was a High-Tath warrior. Well, that's exactly what Lord Milton is. He is a High-Tath, and this was the beginnings of the High-Tath creatures that I talk about a lot in my other books. A vast mythology has grown up around the High-Tath. Most of the Vith great houses, the Blanchfords included, have a High-Tath on their shield, on their coat of arms. And High-Tath are basically alien creatures, and the aliens don't show up too often in my books, but when they do, they're supposed to be alien, weird, with different logic and patterns of thought and so forth. In ages past, the elders, while they were still there, wanted to make a larger, more hardy elder kind, and they found out there somewhere in the cosmos on some unknown world, it's never been specified which one, this race of giants called the High-Tath, who are much larger than the Vith, are a mixture of male and female. They usually have a male head and a male pair of arms, and inside of them, if they have 4 pairs of arms, the first pair will always be male and the head will be male, but the other 3 are more feminine looking, and they get more feminine farther down they go. And inside the High-Task's neck is like the little bud of a head. So each pair of these arms, and they have a corresponding pair of breasts, and they also have a pair corresponding female genitalia down below, if you know what I'm saying. They all exist as almost different entities inside this one body, hoping to take control. It starts off as a man, and when that head gets destroyed, the next pair of arms with a head takes over, and it grows to full size. And as you saw, they blew off Lord Milton's head with a heat gun, and then a second head grew in its place, and it was female. And the rest of his body looks very female, although he's got a male package as well mixed in there. The elders brought these High-Task warriors to Cana many ages ago in the hopes of breeding them to the elder kind and making larger, hardier elder kind. But the problem was the High-Task were just too brutal and too alien and too uncontrollable, and they made war on the elder kind, especially the Vith in the north where they were mostly found. Then the High-Task would attack the Vith, and they developed a distinct taste for Vith flesh, so they would do that. They would attack the Vith and carry them off and eat them, basically. The sister said, told the elders, you brought these creatures here, you need to send them back. And the elders said, no, they're here and they're now, and you're going to have to deal with them. But they did give the Vith the gifts of the mind. There's a gift of strength, the gift of sight, the gift of waft, dirge. They used that to combat the High-Task, and eventually Hama, a lot of heroes from the Vith rose up in response to the High-Task hordes. So there was Hama of Thomas Grove, there was Holt of the Mountain, there was Amira of the Sword, and her daughter Subra of the Mark, who was the first Shadow Tech female. And most of their stories deal with fighting the High-Task, and it's thought Amira of the Sword, who was 30 feet tall, was a High-Task like in disguise. As Leica was in the Bloodstein books, they can be tamed if you show enough strength and keep them impressed and so forth. But so that's where the High-Task came from this Lord Milton character who was a High-Task hiding amongst the elders, basically. That was his secret that he didn't want anyone to know about. Another piece of lore that we were introduced to in this chapter were these black hats that Carahil, in the battle in the Great Hall, instead of killing them, he saved them. He freed them from the clutches of the Black Abyss. And once freed, they became basically lost children. They're no longer evil and full of rage and hate. Now, Sig went down that road, so too did Tori Jane, so too did Bethriel of Moan and Suzerain of Gaul. So you have these 44 black hats that Carahil saved, and Captain Davage sees them up there and sees that they're in danger, that they're about to be swallowed up by a flock of flesh-eating Shadow Tech birds. Wants to go up there. The king says, no, I need you to bring the fleet here. If you say they can be trusted, I'll go get them. And the king does go get them. And that is the beginning of the sisterhood known as the Xandarr 44. And they show up. Once they showed up in the Bloodstein books, in the Perlamum book, as Domino of Holly is number 6 of the Xandarr 44. Later on, they would become instrumental in helping Xandarr reclaim itself after assuming they survived this Black Hat attack. The Xandarr 44 is instrumental in those tenuous years afterwards, and they wear little charms that it's in the shape of Carahil, and they numbered themselves from 1 to 44 as thanks for Carahil freeing them and not killing them. And they show up in a lot of books. They're a lot of fun. The Xandarr 44. In any event, so we've learned Lord Milton's horrendous secret. We've met the Xandarr 44. Next chapter, part 3, chapter 24. Behold the enemy of the Vith. So more fighting next week, more resolving of this attack on Xandarr, and we will go from there. Until then, this is Ren Presents. I am your host, Ren. Peace out.